Okay, here we go. So suppose you're playing a game of trivia, and the final Jeopardy question is, what is the common connection between a goat, an apple, and helium? You might find yourself feeling pretty stumped, right? Don't know the answer? Well, don't worry, I'm here to help you get the right answer and to win the game. And the answer is, all of these three things can be successfully compared to me. Now, I know it might be kind of strange to think that a person could have anything in common with an animal, a fruit, and an element, but surprisingly, these things can tell you a lot about a person and some of their different personality traits. So I'm sure you're wondering, how could I possibly be like, well, an apple? And the answer is we actually have a surprising amount of qualities in common. So the outside of the apple, or the skin, is actually the most nutritious part. And much like the apple, I try to present myself in a kind and helpful way because I want to seem personable and accessible in my exterior. I want people to understand that I'm just as good on the outside as I am on the inside. And now I'm also sure you've all heard the saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. They're very healthy for you. And like the apple, I try to build up healthy relationships with my friends, my family, even with everybody I meet, because I want to be healthy in the same way as the apple. Now, it can also be a symbol of temptation, like in the biblical story of Adam and Eve. Now, this might not be a positive quality, but sometimes I like to talk my friends into doing daring or scary things, like going to a haunted house in the middle of the night. So I can kind of see how I could be a temptation as well, just like the apple. Now, also, apples are sweet to eat, but they're sturdy at their core. And this is like how I am always kind and helpful to people, but in a dangerous or bad situation, I can withstand just about anything by being strong on the inside. So now, the next thing I'm going to compare myself just happens to be my favorite animal, but something else I can relate to, which is the goat. It's a pretty common animal. So goats are surprisingly kind of innovative and creative. Like, you wouldn't imagine an animal with hooves would be able to climb a tree or scale a cliff wall and fit into the tiniest little crevices and stand there, and yet they can. Now, I can relate to the goat about this because I often like to try to think outside of the box or come up with solutions to situations that might not be too common to think about. Now, goats also have pretty funny voices. They make funny sounds, and they have videos of them making humorous noises. And I can relate to this because I'm talkative with my friends, and sometimes I like to do impersonations, make funny noises to keep the conversation amusing and interesting. Now, goats are also pretty hearty eaters. They have multiple stomachs. And now, I only have one stomach, but I also like to eat a lot of things, and I'm a pretty hefty eater myself. I eat snacks, just about anything I can get my hands on. Now, lastly, goats can be kind of hyper and hard to really expect. They do the unexpected. And I'm like that a lot because I like to be spontaneous and like to just, like goats prance around and they interact with other goats. I like to be sociable, and I like to do things that might not quite be expected of people. Now, the last thing I'm comparing myself to is the element helium. Now, how much could a person really have in common with something on the periodic table? Well, at least in my case, quite a bit. So, helium is used to fill up balloons. And like helium, I like to fill up my life with good and positive things like good relationships, fun hobbies, good studies, just anything that gives me fulfillment or something to focus on. And they're also used to fill up balloons at birthday parties, so you'll see them hanging around, and sometimes kids like to suck in the helium and it'll give them a high-pitched, funny voice. Now this relates to me because I like to incorporate humor into the conversations I have. Sometimes not quite the same high-pitched sound, but I like to make funny noises and funny voices like I mentioned before. And lastly, the word helium is derived from the Greek word helios, which means sun. And like the sun, I always try to be bright, uplifting, exuberant to just about anybody I meet, and I try to be a good influence. Now, I hope that these great things help you learn some more stuff about me, and I hope that in the future, if you visit a barn and see a goat, or go to a birthday party and look at some balloons, or pack an apple for lunch, I hope you remember that there's somebody out there who can relate to all three of these things. Thank you.